Right, so, that's good. Good signal.
Yeah, we're all good.
Should be good though, shouldn't it, really?
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? Being in a recording studio.
Yeah. Okay, so today I'm going to be interviewing Paul West. Hello, Paul.
Hi.
But it'd be best for you to explain what you do, Paul,
What a
because you've got
loaded
a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah. I guess I'm a musician, really. And these days that's such a broad term. So parts of that musician tree, the branches are, I earn my main income from this little recording studio we're sat in now, as a producer. I don't tend to do much individual mixing or kind of like individual parts of a project. I tend to see a project through from start to finish, and they tend to be, anything from 2 days to, a year. Actually, an album I'm working on at the moment is a year, and that kind of builds up the bulk of where I earn my money and what I do. I play drums for the No Limit Street Band, which I guess you could say, well, they're a brass band, but they're a high grade functions band, really. One of the best bands I've ever been part of. And I live sound engineer. I worked for a few years as a production manager for an events company, which I've just stopped doing actually because I decided that I wanted to pursue recording and work for myself, and I'm much happier having done that. So yeah, that's broadly speaking. There are the things that I do.
Right. See, what I find interesting, I've known you for a few years, really, haven't I?
Yeah.
In fact, I've know you
from high school.
So a long time actually. But I mean, we've worked together for a few years now. And I'm always interested with people who do multiple things. I do that.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's why I find people like yourself interesting to talk to. Because there's a mindset thing that's going on that I think is important for people to understand if they're trying to develop as an artist or even just getting that sort of ability to see opportunity in something. Yeah. So maybe you can tell me about how your sort of musical journey started.
Yeah, good question. So I grew up in church, and one day after church, a couple called Neil and Maria came up to my parents. They said, "We've moved into a new house and we found a drum kit in the loft. Does Paul want it?"
Yeah, as people do. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Call it serendipitous or what? But I mean, it was, and that's where it all began. Really, I took a drum kit home that week, and I just started playing. I mean, primarily self-taught, but I've had 2 drum teachers along the way. There was a guy called Tom Sewell, who was actually one of the guys in the church at the time, and I think for a few years, every other Saturday or so, I would go up to his farm and learn how to, make some kind of rhythm and sense out of the drum kit. And then at high school, actually, the same time I would have been aware of you, John Howells, who we both know, was a teacher at Oakwood Park Grammar School, and I had lessons on and off for about 2 years, when I would turn up to school, that kind of thing. And he was the guy that really kind of showed me what was possible on a drum kit. And had I stuck with him, after school, I probably would have gone a lot further. But, in my teens, I started playing in a particular band called Strange Day. We recorded our first CD at when I was 13 or 14. I just fell in love with that process of making music, and I just came alive inside and knew that's what I wanted to do.
That's interesting. So, you see, I like that, as you say, serendipitous thing.
Yeah.
Because that is the thing that I see so often when I talk to people. Weird sort of...
Yeah.
I was playing my drums in the house and somebody knocked on the door. They were looking for a drummer,
right.
Which is...
What a coincidence.
Yes. And then that, sets a process off, or somebody bumps into somebody that they haven't seen for a while and it's like, oh, so-and-so's looking for a guitar player. I mean, very sort of odd. And there's a couple of things there, what you're saying that, obviously that initial thing. And obviously your involvement within a church, it brings a lot of other things into play because you're a really good singer and you've obviously got a great ear for melodies and all the rest of it. So that obviously has its roots in the fact that you were involved in music.
It really does. I mean, the great thing about playing in church is that depending on the church you attend and what kind of worship music they play, there are always better and more mature musicians, especially when I started playing in church at like 6 years old. So I grew up being taught by people that have been playing for 20 years, and I was just surrounded by people that were, keen to see me succeed, that were keen to get alongside me and raise me up as a musician, really.
Yeah.
And obviously worship music, you learn all about melody, because a lot of the songs in church are very singable.
Yeah.
So you learn about...
Well, that's interesting, because I think that's one of the processes that we miss out, because in this country, there's too much of the... I always bang on about this, too much of the sort of academic type of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, if you think about in America with gospel music, how many people came out of gospel music, right? And their musicianship is astonishing, and it feels totally natural, because it's so early on, right? And when the Blues Camp project, which you did a couple of years ago with me, that was an attempt over the years that we've done it to get people to get into that mindset when they're working with others. When you get an experienced player come in, the answer is simple. It's, you don't need to do that. You just need to do this, or just listen to the bass drum, or just listen to... There's no complicated thing about
just play.
The way the harmony's working or anything like that. There's a straightforward, to the point, that's how you get it done. Because at the end of the day, you've got to play that song in such a way that everybody can sing along with you. So from a church environment, that's exactly what we were trying to sort of replicate within the Blues Camp.
And I'll always be grateful for that very organic start, really. I mean, I've never been a very good academic kind of person. I always struggled to study. And even when I was having lessons with John, like he would attempt to teach me how to sight read and notation. It just felt very unnatural. And I learned bits and bobs of... And it has proven helpful, and there are a couple of chops that I learned with him that I still use in basically every track I play, because I just really enjoy them, But I mean, I went to study at BIM in Brighton as a 17-year-old. Moved to Brighton on my own as a 17-year-old. Not recommended, actually.
No, it's all right. That will start a whole genre of things. Yeah,
but I didn't.
I lived near Brighton, or have done.
I went to become the best technical drummer I could be, but. I mean, actually, the tuition wasn't great anyway, but I ended up playing for the degree. I was there as a diploma student. I ended up playing for the degree level songwriting classes, and playing for a load of the live performances and all the house bands, and I got some good opportunities just because I was just a very naturally organic player who understood music, who understood feel, and people just want to play with someone who isn't technically thinking about the music. And depending on what stage you learn the really technical stuff, that can be very organic as well. But I've never been a big choppy player, and I know how to lay down a 4/4 groove, and that's what people want. Actually.
Yeah. See, that's interesting, because do you know Elliot Peake?
I know the name.
Yeah. Well, Elliot's really, really great bass player, and he learnt with me. And he was one of these people that you gave him something and he'd go away and not only work on that, but he would develop the idea and understand how that locked into other things.
Yeah.
So by the time he got to the college course that he was doing in London somewhere, same thing. He was doing exactly the same thing as you. In the first few weeks that he was there, he was playing... They shifted him up to the year above.
Right, yeah.
And then he was playing in all the show bands and things, because he had a natural ability to just pick up what was required. And again, that is always the problematic thing with this academic perspective, because you lose the sort of essence of what the piece of music's about.
You do.
Somehow. I know that's a broad, sweeping statement, but so let's go back to you mentioned about BIM.
Yeah.
And obviously you had a lot of opportunities because of the fact that you were there.
Yeah.
I like your cautionary note of moving to Brighton, because Brighton is another.
It's a great city, but not when you're an
No.
immature 17-year-old.
Yeah,
It swallowed me up somewhat.
But it's full of lots of young people that
yeah,
think that they know where it's at, wherever that is, and it's an interesting, weird place.
it is. Dynamic and good for me. I learned a lot. I mean, the great thing is there is a huge love for music in the culture down there.
Yes.
So I just play. The reason it kind of cemented me as a drummer, even though I didn't learn much technically. I just play drums all the time. You know, and it's kind of like I could put down a set of sticks, pick them up again in 2 years' time, and still have that core groove understanding of music, because it just that year just cemented who I was as a player.
Yeah,
just through repetition, really.
Yeah,
just playing.
Yeah, so that is the thing, really. That and I've often, when I've had people sort of say to me about colleges and where they can go and everything, it's all about contacts. And it's all about just being there, and of course you can't make contacts unless you're actively involved.
Yeah.
And there are some places I'm sure that you can be actively involved and not make any contacts at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important aspect of, that type of choosing a college.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that must be true anywhere.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And like
just in the
not to
UK.
badmouth colleges, because actually like it's worked wonders for a large portion of the professional music community. And for certain mindsets and personalities, it works really well. People that are hungry to do that.
Yes, it does. But it also can just be a delaying of the inevitable for some people.
Yeah.
Who really will just end up.
But that comes out of the Western education culture, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like, you need to be qualified to do this.
Yes.
Which is just
and
garbage,
it is
really.
a real problem, because what are you saying with this qualification? Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the arts. I find that very strange.
Yeah.
Very odd. So anyway, we got to that bit. You got the drum kit.
Yeah.
You've obviously had a lot of musical involvement, which again, actually, I would say is one of the sort of features about who you are anyway, that you're always doing things and actively involved with lots of different projects and what have you.
Yeah.
So when did you get to the point of, because somewhere along the line you've also been picking up other instruments en route, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because I know that you singing and stuff. And that was your first band you mentioned that you did some recording.
Yeah. So there was a guy at church, South African guy, that had come over to lead the youth group, and he had this vision the project was called Free Songs, and basically he wanted to create worship music for the church that you didn't charge for. It was just free.
Yeah.
It was funded like a charity, and then you just put the music out and you gave the CDs away.
Yeah.
Or you would pay something and then it would just go straight back into it. So the whole purpose was that it existed to keep itself afloat.
Good.
And we'd been a band for a little while before this. He was like, I want to do a CD for you guys. It didn't cost us anything. And we went around to his house in New Ash Green, and we set up in his lounge, a little control room set up in the study next door. And I just fell in love with that process of making music and seeing how things layered up. And actually, it was an eye-opening moment, because I suddenly started to see how music fitted together in an arrangement type of way. And as a producer now, arrangement is king. And you can write amazing parts that fit together technically, but unless the arrangement has soul, it doesn't go anywhere. And then I knew that had to be part of my life from then on. Basically, it just had to be part of my life. It wasn't a big part of my life until I came back from Brighton, actually. And I came back, and Colin had moved back to South Africa and left all his recording gear. One of the guys in the church had bought it all off of him, but it wasn't really getting used. So I basically hijacked it. We set it up in the shops. There was an empty shop unit up in New Ash Green, and we set it up, and I recorded a drum demo when I came back from Brighton, with the vision to create a show reel kind of thing, to get myself work, which I'm not sure I ever sent it to anyone, but I loved that process, and from then on just did more and more and more. And we had this space, it was a big space actually, for a little project studio, and I just started recording people or offering to record people for no money, and it just started to snowball from there, really. And then where did we go from there? I was going through a crisis of identity, really, because like I didn't really know who I was. I knew I wanted to play music, but that was about it. I thought to myself, right, I've got to grow up. I've got to get a serious job, you know. And so I worked at a tyre shop round the corner. I was crap at that. I went and worked for my dad for a few years. I was crap at that. You know, I was the business development manager, which I'm pretty sure my dad created the role just to give me a job. But I was rubbish at that because I sat behind a desk and I was just like, I've got poor attention span anyway. That's part of the reason why I do so many things, you know, because I love to move on.
That's exactly probably my issue as well.
And I like to be involved in different projects. So I did that for a year, sat behind a desk, and it was very clear that I was bad at it. And you know, it's difficult when your dad's the boss, but everyone around me and all the other people he employed were just a bit like, you could see the look on their face like, Paul cannot do this job. So they moved me into the warehouse team, which is good because it could be flexible, and the whole arrangement there was that I could, you know, work what I wanted there so that I could make room for my other stuff. And that's when stuff really started to, you know, establish itself in my world. You know, I started playing for No Limit Street Band. I started, you know, taking on some paid work for the recording stuff, and they weren't great, but you know, I started to learn. I started to master my craft, you know.
And actually get the business bit going as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. I'm still not great at the business thing.
Yeah, but a lot of people aren't.
No.
But the point about it is that these things come in little increments, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
You know, and sometimes you have to learn them by doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Because that really
And I really
cements.
did. Yeah.
Well, it appears that way, doesn't it? That it sort of cements that thing. Because once you've learnt the hard way, you suddenly go, okay, you know, that's that, you know.
Yeah.
Won't do it that way again. We'll have to do it this way. So that's interesting. So when you, because I love the setup you got here, because it's incredibly functional, and
It
I'll
really
have to
is.
explain to people because you won't be able to see it, but it's a very small control room. Well, not very small because I've been in a lot smaller control rooms. So you got your desk, and well, I say you got your desk because everything's on screen now.
Yeah, I'm all in the box.
It's all in the box, but you've got lots of acoustic tiling, and you've treated this room really well. But what's really cool is you've got a live room that's next to here, which is actually the bar area.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's a large bar area for a it's a sort of rugby club come social club come.
Yeah, so when was it? A few years ago, basically, I was going out with a girl who became manager of this building. And there's a house on the back, like a flat on the back, and we both lived there. And this room we sat in was an empty storeroom. Before that, it was like the children's playroom where I think, you know, parents would put their kids while they went upstairs and got pissed.
Yeah.
But it was just full of chairs and
that
desks.
sounds pretty newish green. To
Yeah,
me.
well, it is very newish green, yeah. Not so much anymore, thank you.
No.
And,
It's had a checkered history.
So I basically said, because the building's actually owned by the Village Association, and they employ the site manager to run the building for them.
Yeah.
So I kind of got approval from my girlfriend at the time, and got approval from the VA to build this place, you know. And I basically borrowed the money off of a friend who believed in me. In fact, he had offered, and he said, "I'll give you some money to start." So I borrowed £2,000, and over the course of a summer, from like May to the end of August, I built this myself with some hand tools and, you know, lots of sweat, and I now have an arrangement where I'm paying proper rent and proper, you know, rates to the appropriate people, and it's run much more like a business, whereas before it was just, you know, a perk of living here. And on the other side of the wall is the downstairs bar area, which is an enormous acoustic space, which has been acoustically treated, and we've got patching through to the other room. So I pay a very reasonable fee for this little control room, and then I pay a little bit extra per hour for this other room if I want it.
And it's brilliant because we've recorded brass in there, drum kit, bass, and the whole a whole lot.
And the many guitars.
And the many guitars. Yeah, oh yes, we had 16 guitars in here. That's another thing.
16 acoustic guitars.
And when you
in
were
one
saying
go.
that you had some projects that have been going on for a year, I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Because you've got another.
Some 4.5.
Some 4.5 years.
Vic
which
Highland.
Is, yeah. But anyway, we will be finishing that this year.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's brilliant. And what I like about this is there's a bit of sort of innovative sort of thinking that's gone into how this has come about. You didn't just go and get a unit on an industrial estate that you did.
Yeah.
Which then, of course, from a point of view of actually making money doing what you're doing, is problematic if
It
you're
would have been
overhead.
impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You know, and
Even for a space this size, retail, you're looking like £800 to £1,000 a month. And I was never going to be able to afford that.
no, of course, that's right. And you know, when I do the sort of advisory stuff for people setting up as guitar teachers, or any type of teacher really, it's like, well, if you're a guitar, what do you need? Well, you need your guitar, which could be anything, as cheap as chips.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a music stand. We'll go old style, right? And then obviously, if you're not teaching from home, you'll need a vehicle, and you obviously need some sort of computer, if only just to, you know, keep your accounts on.
Yeah.
And then what else? Nothing really.
Yeah.
You know,
You're good to go.
Yeah, because a lot of people, when they're setting up as guitar teachers, think they need a studio. And this is the thing that really cracks me up. It's like, well, we have a studio, you know, and people come in and I can record the.
Yeah.
You go, like, why? Why do you need that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's different if you're actually recording a band. It's that, yeah, different. But
Yeah.
But it's amazing how people, the costs can escalate
Yeah.
with the dream. You know.
And I think it's good to have dreams, but you got to manage your expectations. Like
Exactly.
what is the point? I mean, a studio, a dedicated space for guitar lessons might have a certain amount of sex appeal. Students are all going to go, "Wow, this is cool."
Yeah, but not if you're only then going to charge £20 an hour.
Exactly.
Which is what people often do.
Absolutely.
And you know, and you go and look at that and think, well,
And it restricts your client base because actually not everyone can travel to you.
no.
You want to be able to travel to them.
Yes, exactly.
So then you've got a space you spent all this money on that's not getting used.
Exactly. Yeah, there's that type of thinking. So,
Yeah.
so we're obviously, you know, that's something I wanted to sort of bring out about what you're doing with this, because again, it's important for people when they start off to have that think of where am I in this, and obviously a lot of what you've done comes from the fact that you are here, and you've been here for quite some time. And I know you don't live around here anymore.
No.
But a lot of what you've managed to achieve has been due to the fact that you've been here.
Yeah.
And that's another thing which I think there is a certain essence to where you are that's important to.
It's about the community you're part
Yes,
of.
yeah.
So like in the same way that growing up in church, like playing music, gave me space and opportunity to play with all kinds of different people from all kinds of backgrounds and all different cultures. You know, when you get into a band, you know, like Strange Day, for example, you become part of whatever local music scene is around you. You know, and they all became my friends. And actually, Kent's got a really good one.
Yes.
Really good one. And I've just had opportunities,
Yes.
you know.
I think that is something that because I don't live in Kent, but I still come back. This is obviously one of the issues that I have at the moment with the amount of travelling. But there is something different here to, say, Sussex, where I am. I mean, Brighton is something else,
Yeah.
you know. That's like the planet Zog,
Yeah.
as we've already worked out. Just happens to be in Sussex. But there is a different thing going on here. And I think what it is, it's a bit like the driving. Driving is terrible in Sussex, where everybody wants to kill everybody else on the road
Yeah.
because they feel
Like
they've got a right to be there. Whereas as soon as when I drive into Kent, as soon as I get to Tunbridge Wells, the Kent side of Tunbridge Wells, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
You don't feel like somebody's going to drive over the top of you all the time. Or, you know, it's just weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. And there seems to be something about that mentality when it comes to music, strangely, that here there's a little bit more of this sort of buddiness. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, oh yeah, I'll come and play, and and
It's because people go to Brighton to learn how to play. So you've got all these serious, hyper-focused people that want to learn. So they're all about making it. They're all about being professional. They're all
there is that, but also outside of Brighton, there's another sort of thing going on that I don't quite get. There's some good little places. So I don't want to. I'm not writing off all of that,
no.
but there are little pockets of things that are really interesting going on there. Whereas here, it just seems, because I grew up in, my sort of teenage years in places like Dartford, and that was, it wasn't that far removed from the Stones type of attitude where you could do this stuff.
Yeah.
And you didn't actually, you just had to get your hands dirty.
Yeah, you did.
Right? And play.
Yeah.
And all your mates were all doing the same sort of thing. And you were all just hungry for that information.
Yeah.
And it was it was a network. We wouldn't have known it as a network then, but that was definitely what was going on. I'm not sure that I get the same sort of sense of that outside, certainly in Sussex. And I'm sure somebody will turn around and say that's a load of bullshit, what I'm saying. But there is something slightly different.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get to Brighton, well, that is something
It's a whole different animal.
totally, totally different.
And if you want to become a whiz and, play in world-class function bands your whole life, Brighton's the place to go, actually.
Yeah.
Because there are loads of venues. You get into a band, you become the drummer. And actually, I've got a group of friends, from the Brighton days that are playing, in chart-topping bands because they made room for themselves in that world. And that's a great thing.
And there are lots of very, very high-profile film producers, people involved in theatre and everything, who work in London but they live in Brighton.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff.
But my thinking is that people like that were always going to make it no matter where they were.
Yeah, I think the thing is with this, we often get sidetracked with a vision, which is, this is the sort of way to become the celebrity type of thing. And it's not, I don't really think that seems to work, because to me, there's an I always look for the anomaly. The thing that, if that is true, explain that type of thing. And I always look for this. So the sort of anomalies in the world of guitar, Hendrix obviously is a good example of that. And Django Reinhardt and people like this, where you sort of go, well, if you did need to know all of that and you did need to do that, how did that work?
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
Yeah.
That doesn't, or the Rolling Stones, that, or even the Beatles, right? This doesn't conform to that trajectory, right? And what you're sort of saying is sort of hinting a little bit, and that's why I was saying about this, that there is a sort of a set idea, and you've got to remember that there's a lot of money in university and college education.
Serious dollars.
Serious money. Yeah. And it distorts the way that things appear to be. And it is self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
If you need a piece of paper to say that you can do X, there we go.
Yeah.
Right? And until that sort of cartel is broken down by things happening online that are cheap being offered,
yeah,
which is obviously beginning to happen, that the qualification is taken as seriously as something else.
Yeah.
And, that could happen, and it won't happen in the way that, it won't be sort of nice, it won't be nice the way it happens, but there'll be certain education systems will collapse because they can't get the revenue.
Yeah.
Because people are going online.
It's a really interesting conversation, is it, money in music? Because it wasn't until about 120 years ago that money was even part of music.
No,
because until
okay, there might have been a bit of a difference with classical music and somebody being a patron of Beethoven or Mozart or something. But generally, no. I mean, musicians fell into that sort of bracket of the wandering itinerant characters who were effectively walking newspapers.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, well,
I like
they certainly were. I mean, if you go back far enough, and if you go back even further, then they would have been part of the culture that were doing things on a, whatever you want to call it, spiritual, ritualistic sort of thing. But they would have been musicians who did other stuff, you know. And I think I think that's actually what the draw is for musical trends anyway, because you've only got to look at things like rave music, and that is essentially still, well, you know, when that was happening,
Yeah.
was still that essence of, there was something other about it,
Yeah.
you know, which gives that, you know,
the spiritual dynamic of
Yeah,
getting
yeah, the
lost
spiritual
in music.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, it keeps popping up every now and again.
Yeah. I think it's still there. It's not as prolific money wise for
No.
corporations. And for me, one of the biggest, you know, conversations I've had with myself, or battles, whatever you want to call it, is how you manage the money side of it. Because if I want to do this full time, I got a wife and a baby and one on the way. I got rent to pay and a mortgage to pay. I have to earn money, you know. But being careful not to make money the reason you do it, but still add enough importance to it
Right.
that you're not shooting yourself in the foot.
Right. That is a really interesting conversation to have. Right. So I can second that.
Yeah.
Because obviously I brought up 4 children, you know, and when my wife was alive, we had horses and goodness knows what else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They had the whole stuff, you know. So there was the house, and I had the teaching practice I had was so big that I was having people working for me that I would rotate around the schools as well as me
Wow.
being in. So
Wow.
that was, yeah, it was big, and again, that was an issue, and a conversation I was having with myself about things, particularly when you had the function bands. That was the one that really got me, and I realised that was something I didn't like at all.
Yeah.
Because for me, turning up and being the host, well, being, you know, the host from, you know, Tom is great. Tom Knight is par excellence at that sort of stuff, of
He's
being the
very,
front
very
man
good.
who can, you know, doesn't matter what's going on out there,
Yeah.
you know, with the wedding or whatever, they're there and they can control it. For me, I didn't like that.
Right.
Because again, it was like, well, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this stuff? This is not why I came to do this.
I think it's a good question. Is it why are you doing it? You know, and if you live to play music in a function band as a musician, I think you're missing out. But I think it can be a good, you know, as a drummer, I like playing drums all the time. You know, and I love playing covers in No Limit Street Band. It's a different kind of function band because, you know, it's brass. You know, there's no electric instruments at all. It's all acoustic. And I really enjoy that. But, you know, when you're doing 3 gigs a week, I got a bit bored, actually, because it's someone else's music. And that's the divide, isn't it?
Yes.
Are you going to make music or are you going to play someone else's
Yes,
music?
now that is the thing. That was my problem, because obviously, like, I've always been interested in songwriting.
Yeah.
And even when I did songs by other people, I never really wanted to do them like the other people had done them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, well, why would you? I mean, even if you looked at a band, you know, Led Zeppelin never repeated the number that they did.
No.
They did it in a different way,
Yeah.
depending on where they were or how they felt, you know.
Yeah.
And you think, well, why? You know, so the irony of this is like, if you're in to me, like a tribute band would be like, oh my God, I don't even know whether I could do this at all, you know? Because the idea to be in a Led Zeppelin tribute band and only do what they did on the record just seems completely ironic.
Yeah.
Because Led
That's a
Zeppelin
good
wouldn't have
point.
even done
They wouldn't have done that.
What they done on the record. So
People love songs, though, don't they?
They do.
And I love songs as well. I mean, as a music producer, it's about the song. It's not about the band. It's not about their ego. It's not even necessarily about their sound. It's about the song, you know.
But the interesting thing is that when you look at the song, is a song fixed or is it alive
Well,
and active? And if
very
you look
good
at
question.
you see, if you look at that, then suddenly the song doesn't have to be the same.
Well, I think you can play dead music.
Yes, yes,
And I think that you're in danger of doing that as a musician if you're playing in a functions band solely. You can just end up playing dead music because you play the same structure for the same song. You learn it to the T. You don't even have to think about it.
No.
It becomes a job in the dullest sense of the word. You know, I think it's good to, you know, have a job as a musician, but there's got to be room for life in it.
exactly.
You know, I've played in certain functions bands and I interpret the music differently to the record in terms of drum parts and things like that because I want to feel it. I want to engage with it spiritually, emotionally. I do that by putting me in the music.
Yes.
And I've been told off. No, can you not do that?
Yeah.
Can you not do that? No, just play it.
Well, the interesting thing is, you know, I've worked with you, I worked with Sam Kelly, same thing, exactly the same thing. It's like, well, why did you book me?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I would never
I'm
say
the wrong guy.
Yeah, but that's what I would say. You know, that's not the way I am with music anyway. But Sam said the same thing, that if somebody's turned around and said that to him, he said, well, you've booked the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And having the confidence to go, well, you know.
Yeah, how much do you need it? That's a good question. It's like, do you need to be accepted by? And this is the thing: is creative people, you know, by percentage, are probably a little bit more insecure anyway because of the way they're wired. Right? And
Well, they can be.
they can be.
Yes.
I think you can grow out of that.
Yes.
You know, but in
But
the
I think you've got a good point there.
because I went through this. I just said yes to everything, and I was saying yes to opportunities that were not for me, that delayed me in my progress rather than help me along. It was just a filler, you know. And I played in bands that didn't challenge me. I played in bands that weren't as good as me and weren't as good as I wanted to be or play as well as I wanted to play, just because I so desperately wanted to play, you know. And you know, you could argue that, you know, you just take what you get, but I think you got to honour yourself better than that. You know, if you're self-aware and you know where you're really at, you know, play in bands that are better than you, bands that are going to pull you up. You know, be prepared to be the worst guy in the band so that you get better. I mean, you might not last very long, but if you went for it and did it anyway.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I used to for a long period of time, I always had a second guitar. I know that when I work with Mike, I do, but in my own thing, I don't generally have a second guitar.
Yeah.
Keys, you know, because otherwise, if you've got a keyboard player, I mean, come on, how much more room is there going to be?
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
But in the early days of like Red Touch, I used to always had a second guitarist, and they were often people that I had taught, so they understood me.
Yeah.
But I could have chosen anyone, and I would never, you know, I could have chosen somebody who was like, you know. But the point that I wanted was, I wanted somebody who was sensitive enough to what was going on, and could be themselves,
Yeah.
and they had an understanding of me.
Yeah.
Not somebody who could come in. And it's interesting that, because obviously recently I've not been able to play, a couple of the people that I work with have had to get other guitarists in, and suddenly they're confronted. They've, you know, chosen somebody who's like really good player,
Yeah.
but there's no room.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, well, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Right? Because these people are too big.
Yeah.
You know, they're just like, and guitar is terrible for this. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I could do this here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could.
Yeah.
But don't.
No.
You know, in actual fact, it's more a case of, do I actually need to do anything here
But
as a guitarist?
that's a maturity thing and an insecurity thing. Like, insecure players just play all over everything.
Yeah.
Because it has to be about them.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, you know, and you don't have to be old to be mature, but I've played with musicians that are much younger than me, and they just understand music. They understand the people in the room. They understand that actually this isn't, like a dep, for example, is there to serve the band they're depping for. And they play to make room for
Exactly
who they are.
And that is, again, that is the one. You imagine, it's like saying, how do you put goodwill onto a balance sheet? You know,
Yes.
it's the same thing. How do you put that in a college course? Today we're going to learn how to not play.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, today we're going to put the guitar back in the case and listen to the singer for a change, right?
That we did have a lesson like that in Brighton, actually.
Oh, you did, Ed? Well, that's...
They made us play 4/4, for 10 minutes without filling.
Oh, well, that's good.
The same groove. And it was hard.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
everything in me just want, I mean, even a hi-hat ruff or something like that, and it's just so difficult.
Yeah.
But everyone
you
failed
imagine
first time
you,
round.
You can imagine a guitarist being told, now, put your guitar back in the case.
Yeah.
You're not needed.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Yeah. There's always a guitar
You
in
can
this
go off
track.
stage for this track.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or here's a maraca.
Yeah.
You know, type of thing.
I still struggle with that, to be honest, because I love playing so much.
Yeah.
I garnet cymbal tinkles here and there. People are just like, shut up.
Yeah, but the point about it is it's about the song talking to you, right?
Yeah.
So you have to do that for you to go, well, I can do that.
Yeah. And I actually think it's entirely appropriate. I actually went to California in 2009 to, they called it worship school, but there's a big American church over in California. It's got a great music team, you know, and they run a school, you know, that's a month long in the summer, and I went. And one of the best times of my life, actually. Great environment, great people, good school, you know, spiritually and educationally. But there was this, and I'll always remember this, and I use this as an example often. There was this graduate from Berkeley. He had a 6-string Federa bass guitar, and this guy could play, right? And the guy around the course was just like, no, I just want you to plod on the 8th notes. And this guy just couldn't wrap his head around it. No. And it wasn't because he wanted to overplay, actually. In this case, it was because there was no room for his expression and how he heard bass guitar and how he heard the song. So actually, as a producer, I often have to go, can you just play the 8th note there? But if there's no room in your vocabulary or understanding of the music to go, look, let loose in this session. I want you. And that's one of my favourite phrases. We had a guy in here on Friday, and I was just like, in this section, can I just put what you want on this? I want this to be full of flair and excitement. I want you on that song. But this guy just couldn't wrap his head around it, and I've always used it as a reminder to leave room for people to be expressive, but also in a mature way that doesn't take over the music.
Yeah, well,
you need both.
The story I normally say to people that I've taught and they're going to go off to some, you know, music course. On day one, you're going to meet the heavy metal guitarist from hell. And he will be there.
Yeah.
And you'll go, holy shit,
yeah.
This guy is just incredible.
Yeah.
And then after about an hour of him twiddling,
bored,
you'll start be going, okay, you're quite good.
Yeah.
You know, and then after the next day or so, you'll think, oh, God, this is driving me up the wall. Yeah. And then it's not until you get to the first project when suddenly they go, okay, we're going to be doing a soul song here. You know, we've got...
Can you pull out the Strats?
Yeah. So we're going to have, you know, you're going to do this song by Aretha Franklin, and the heavy metal guitarist from hell is trying to get his head around that one.
Yeah.
Right. What do you do with a song that's only got one chord in it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Book another guy.
and the original guitar is actually slightly out of tune.
Yeah.
You know. Okay. Really get your head around that.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, if you've learned to listen and you've learnt the basics, okay, because you've got to have the vocabulary, then you can go, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to make sense. And that's where you get the drummers go like, I want this guy.
Yeah.
This guy can play a really great soul groove or, you know, or funk pattern.
I think you have to go through the overplaying phase to wind your neck in a bit. Because actually, if you never explore that territory, and this is why it's important who you surround yourself with, because actually, if you haven't got people around you that understand, you've got to go through that. Like for me, it was in church. I always just played too loud because I loved a downbeat, you know, and actually when I was at BMI, people loved the way I dropped the snare, you know, like really in the pocket, but it was just too loud, and I had to go through that, and it's quite painful actually, that process. You realise actually for a long time now I've been overplaying and I've been playing too loud, and you have to, you know, be humble enough to manage your playing in a way that, you know, gives you opportunity for that flair when it's appropriate, and you learn when that is through the natural process.
That is exactly the same with guitar, and I would also say the problem for the guitarist is that they often don't see enough people who are better than them, right?
Yeah.
to give them that sort of humility of thinking, oh shit, you know, I need to just pull in my horns a bit here. And you know.
I was recording engineer for an album launch for one of my. There's a guy called Martin Smith who was in a band called Delirious, and they had some chart success. He's doing solo stuff now, and I was lucky enough. My old employer hired me as a freelancer to be system tech and recording engineer. I'm stood at the side of stage, and nothing they're doing is flashy, but I'm sitting there going, these guys are insanely good, you know. And I consider myself being able to hold my own on a stage with most people. And the drummer wasn't doing anything particularly flary, the guitarist, but there was just this passion and maturity and sensitivity, and I was just sitting there going, and I came away going, I got up my game, and I almost pray for situations that make me go, it's time to up my game.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you get complacent.
Of course you do. Yeah. Of course you do. And as I say, the things that, for you know, on that sort of line, for me, is when I'm not watching other guitarists, actually, because, you know, unless you see somebody who is really different, I actually get that more when I see other instrumentalists.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, good point.
And because there's
in different genres and different styles.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even music, it could be a play. You know, it could be something you sort of think,
yeah, but you're a hippie, Vic.
Yeah, I know.
I'm teasing.
Yeah. But no, it's that type of thing where you can see the essence of what it is that's making the communication.
Yeah.
I think that's
playing from here. You're barely.
Yeah. I think because everybody's too much in their head, and you know. Anyway, let's go back to what you're doing.
Yeah.
A little bit more, because these are fascinating insights into how you've got to those things. What would you say would be? How are we doing?
We are at 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Well, a couple of things about advice to somebody.
Yeah.
What would you say if you got somebody who, like a younger, well, even if it was the younger version
if I
of
could
you?
talk to myself when I was younger. Yeah. Keep going. I know that sounds strange, but so I'm a Christian and I have faith. And, you know, I would, in my dark times or when I was lacking motivation, I would just cry. I was just like, what am I meant to be doing? Like, I'm doing stuff that's meant to be making me feel good and fulfilled. And this voice, for a whole season of my life, all I kept hearing was keep going. You know, because anything worth having, I mean, I'm getting philosophical here.
No, that's good.
Anything worth having in this life takes everything you've got.
Yes. Yes.
You know, if you want to be a master of something, it's going to take everything you've got. If you want to do something that's going to sustain you and fulfill you for your whole life, it's going to take everything you've got.
I totally agree with that. I mean, obviously, I come from a different perspective from you.
Yeah.
Well, it's not probably that different, really.
Yeah.
But there is that sort of thing that you need to. I look at it like a courtship.
Okay.
So you turn up with a bunch of flowers, and she goes, "Nah, what'd you do?"
Yeah.
You've got to keep going back.
Yeah.
You've got to keep going back.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, we've got this idea that, one bunch of flowers will do it. You know, take her out for a meal, be fine.
Tick the box.
Tick the box.
Yeah.
Tick the box. And of course, it's not like that. And if you go into any other culture, there's an indebtedness, which is what I picked up from something you said earlier, that it's actually not, you know, when you start assigning money to things and you give it a value, and somebody does that and somebody does that and that's it. Yeah. That's not how things worked before, because it was an indebtedness. Yeah. It was, you did that which gave, you know, you owed something to somebody, but they owed you then that, and then they owed, you know, and so it went. And that's actually what created the community. Yeah. That sort of made things lock together. Now, because of the way that industrialisation happened and capitalism, we've lost that. But the thing is, with art, it actually works quite well. This sort of thing that it's not commoditised in that way. Because you were talking about that project that guy from South Africa
Yeah.
was saying, well, you do the things, and you could give them away, all right? Or somebody could give you some money, it goes back in the pot. Now, I think I told you, when I was a lot younger, I did the first single that I did. We ran off however many, and we sent some of them to radio stations.
Yeah.
We didn't do it ourselves, the studio did it. And then we didn't realise this, but we started getting airplay all over Britain. And we were completely unaware of this. And eventually, or part and parcel of this was that it was BBC Radio Kent when it was in Chatham instead of it being out in the Sandwich Wells. Picked up on this, and the guy who ran the rock programme, a guy called Mike Brill, said about he'd come out and record us in a concert situation live. So they had the BBC Mobile.
Great.
And then we recorded us at Chatham Central Hall.
Yeah.
And we were paid. And this was the incredible thing. This is where you start going like, that's very strange. They paid us virtually to the pound exactly how much it cost us to record the single and produce the singles.
Really?
Yes. So we could have given everything away and we would have got our money back. And that's always stuck in my mind, that
That's
you can't...
Fascinating.
Yes. So you have to have another way. Don't just get trapped in that thing. And everybody does this. They get the record, and now we're going to sell it.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But you might not need to.
Yeah.
You might just need to give it out like a business card, right?
Yeah.
Just keep giving it out and then see what comes back.
Yeah.
And again, that's more of that sort of thing, like that mentality of keeping going.
Yeah.
As I say, it's really then like a courtship of just keep doing that, see what comes back, start working on that and see what comes.
Yeah. I agree. And it will happen. I mean, you have to be wise and you have to learn from, you have to be aware of the times you're in, right? So we're in the age of social media. Like, there's no money in record sales anymore unless, you're a worldwide superstar. If Ed Sheeran, for example, was selling records 20 or 30 years ago, he would be significantly more well off than he is now, and he's already a bajillionaire. And as an original, it's different. As an originals band, you have to be doing it because you love the music and you believe you've got something people need and want to hear. And that has to be your primary focus. And if you keep going and you are committed, and it will take everything you've got, but it will happen. I just believe that, unless the music's bad. And sometimes you're in...
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of people that I can think of and you think, well, the music's bad, and they still did it.
Well, oh yeah, I'm not saying don't do it.
You see, so I don't even...
And bad is subjective, I shouldn't have used that term.
No, I just sort of pulled you up on that only because I'm not sure what bad and good are anymore. I think sometimes it's like, well, sometimes people just hit the nail on the head somehow.
Yeah. And
you could look at things and go, well,
Normally it's people that have got something to say.
Yes.
So you got musicians who are amazing and can put good, pretty chord structures together, and can even write nice melody. But unless you've got life experience from which to draw from,
yes, and that's exactly what I think, hits the spot. And when you say it's something to say, it's not necessarily a wordy lyric, because sometimes people get that wrong. And I listen to lots of weird podcasts where they'll play something and you think, oh my God, this music's
I've got the book of crap lyrics around here somewhere. And some of it is utter garbage.
Yeah, some of it is like people are trying to get their message out, even if it won't scan in any shape or form. You know what I mean? But great lyrics don't do that. No. If you look at Bob Dylan's lyrics, sometimes it takes you a while to realise what he's actually saying. But
it's when a modern day prophet, that man.
But when you get there, it's like a myth.
Yeah.
There's a meaning there, but you don't. It's not on the surface.
Well, it comes from somewhere else.
Yes.
It comes from somewhere else.
Yes.
And I think that's the whole point. You got to be really to be successful in this industry, for want of a much better word. You got to know who you are, and you got to be honest. You got to be self-aware, honest with yourself. You got to be humble and be willing to access the parts of you that have got actual life in them, whether happy or sad, you know, because people can connect with that. And ultimately, music is an emotional thing, emotional and spiritual thing. And you can, you know, like paint by numbers, you can make music painted by numbers, but unless you're making music.
Well, the thing is, as I say to people when they're songwriting, you know, a song is actually a living entity, and it has a pulse.
Yeah, well, it does.
That's the point. And we talk about the pulse of a piece of music without realising that it is actually a pulse. It's alive.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, it's not there.
No.
All right? And it also has to have a body, which is the structure, right?
Yeah.
So there's your chords and all the rest of it. And it has to have something to say.
Yeah.
Right? And then suddenly, you know, you've got, there it is.
Yeah.
Because how else can you explain how certain songs seem to exist forever?
Yeah, timeless.
Right?
No matter how well they're recorded, you know, no matter how good quality even the musicianship is, whether the guitars are in tune or
Exactly, which is what I said. All the bass is in tune, as in on some, you know, Van Morrison songs, the bass is out of tune. It doesn't make.
But if it's speaking to the heart of a nation,
absolutely,
for example,
and that's the point. Now, do you see that? Because you obviously see a lot of people coming in.
yeah.
How often do you see that with people that they've got? I'm not saying that they understand that, but they do it.
I think you see in this industry. We were talking earlier about people you surround yourself with, and who I am attracts the kind of people that.
Yeah, that's true.
That I naturally have chemistry with, you know, and I actually haven't had many people through the door that haven't got anything to say. I work a lot with singer-songwriters who are used to being on their own and crafting their music in the secret place, so to speak.
Well, that's lucky, because I mean, I had a friend, in fact, Graham, who masters the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
He always had the thing of, you know, there comes points in time when you have to polish a turd. And, you know, that's the sort of thing we think, that's a bit unfortunate, really. That, particularly for in that situation where you're mastering something, and it's like, well, you know, what am I going to do with this?
Isn't it? Because, like,
I know there's been some things I've confronted you with where you think, what the hell do I do with this?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But you know, that's part of my...
it really has.
Yeah, but that's part of my sort of creative thing of looking at, you know, how far can you push that until you start, you know, because there is... I'm interested in lots of unusual sort of world music things, which really you look... Well, in fact, you don't even have to go that far. You only have to look at some old blues stuff. Yeah. And you think, what is that?
Yeah.
I mean,
some of it's really out there.
You know, it doesn't conform to anything that you'd sort of go like, well, is that music?
Well, I kind of sense that's a deliberate exercise on your part to force yourself and the people you're working with out of their box.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is.
You know?
It is.
And I think that's a good exercise because actually it awakens part of you to create music you wouldn't otherwise have created.
Yes.
And then it naturally becomes
part
of your process and you write through that anyway.
Yes, yeah, that is true. I do that because I've always been intrigued by how good an 8-year-old kid who's just learning to play guitar, who then writes a little piece based on a simple bit of knowledge, like you've got a couple of pieces of music here, you could literally just change the order of these notes and come out with another tune.
Yeah.
How good that can be.
And their innocence is their platform, isn't it?
Yeah, and also to the point that they'll put little bits of chromaticism in.
Yeah.
You know, you think like, my God.
You don't understand what you're doing.
No, but it sounds good.
But who cares? Yeah.
Yeah. And you go, and that ability then gets lost down the intellectual, we've got to do this thing. And that's the area that I think you've got to try to keep that essence there somehow.
Yeah.
You know, with people.
It's like songwriting classes, isn't it? It's like it's such a fine line between writing to formula and creating lifeless garbage and actually applying principles to what you already do.
Well, I think what I've always felt with that, and you've seen that in action in the way that I do it with
Blues Camp,
is that you want the raw material, right? And the raw material can arrive in such a way that it can actually be fully formed
Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are lucky.
Yeah.
Then you can structure it.
Yeah.
And then you've got to be able to do the things like be able to eat your own children, which is like, you know, get rid of the first verse, which you love,
Yeah.
but it doesn't go.
Oh.
Yeah, you got my
Hardest
drift.
part of my job actually is confronting people. It's like, this is great, but we could probably make another song out of this section, but it doesn't.
Exactly.
It doesn't
that's
work.
That's what I call eating your own children.
Yeah.
It's like
You've got 5 ideas in one song here.
exactly.
Pull them apart and make 5 new things.
Well, you know, if you've ever lived through the prog rock era, then that is a good example of people not being able to eat their own children, because it's like you've got 15 songs in one song, you know. But so your advice would be to your younger self to keep going. What about a bit of business advice to somebody who wants to set up doing what you're doing, like with a studio, first of all?
Yeah, I mean,
Because that's a tricky one.
you
right?
can do it anywhere. You don't need expensive gear.
Right.
Listen, shut your eyes and listen to what you're doing, and that people will be attracted to the sound you make. I mean, you've got to be a nice person. I think 50%, if not more, of the business I get isn't because of my product.
I totally agree with that.
It's because of who I am.
Exactly, because I've worked with some people who are sound engineers who are totally a pain in the arse.
Yeah, they're amazing,
but you never
but
go
I can't
back.
stand them.
You can't go back.
Yeah,
You can't go back to them.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
and every mix I do, I send to the client and I'm happy with it, you know, and it's finished in my opinion. And then they'll send it back with a whole list of notes, and I send it back to them. They're thrilled, and I think it's worse than it was the first time. But that's because it's not about me. So unless you have humility as like one of the main parts of how you operate, you're going to come unstuck. It's not about you. And actually, music shouldn't be about you.
No,
anyway.
I totally agree. I think that's a universal thing, personally.
So use your ears. I mean, in this modern age, everything's on a computer screen, but shut your eyes once in a while. Learn how sounds fit together. Make mistakes, and just keep doing it. You know, and as soon as you find yourself not in love with it anymore, you're either doing something wrong or you're doing the wrong thing. And I've been in and out of this job for the last 10 years, you know, because I wasn't sure who I was or what I wanted to do, whether it was the right fit. And I'm easily discouraged because I'm quite a sensitive person. And I just feel very blessed to have been held up on the journey the whole way. I know that wasn't I'm not a bullet point kind of guy. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's fine.
I don't have a one-line wonder for you.
I think what you were saying about, and I could echo that business. I said something earlier, but you're saying you don't have to spend a lot of money on it.
No, you don't.
What would you say for somebody, you know, I know this is a horrible question to ask, but a budget, roughly.
Budget. So the things you need a good computer. I spend every 6-7 years I spend a ridiculous amount of money on a good computer because it's going to work flawlessly for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, like in the digital age of music, you don't want to be worrying about whether your computer's falling over. So number one thing, good computer. Good set of headphones or a good set of speakers. They don't have to be a lot of money, £200. And 2 microphones essentially. Depending on if you want to record a drum kit, it's slightly different, but you can hire microphones very cheap these days. But a good vocal microphone you can get for £100, and get yourself an SM57, a Shure SM57, which sounds good on anything if you learn where to put it. So for £500 you could start making music that, if you knew exactly what you were doing with it, you could put music out on the radio easily.
That's good. That's a good bit of advice.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And the thing with this business is there's gear culture. People want stuff. It's about stuff. It's about stuff. And you know, I love gear. I love it. I'm technically minded. You know, I would, you know, sit on the internet and look at speakers rather than TVs and things, because I just wanted audio gear. You know, and I think you've got to have a passion for musical equipment.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like that with guitars and stuff. Is you can.
But buying the right stuff, that's what it is. Because I haven't got racks and racks of outboard gear here. I've got a couple of bits. But essentially what I've got is a pair of speakers and a computer. That's it. And a good room. A good room.
Yeah, that's really good. So, any sort of projects that you're?
Well, I'm working with this guy called Vic Highland.
Oh, yeah,
Like this collaboration project.
Yes.
It's really esoteric and crazy.
Yes, I know. And I've got some more things to tell you about that. So
Okay,
we'll
great.
do that off.
After the stop button.
Yeah, they'll give you a chance to sort of swoon. And
People to
think,
check
my
out Pedestrian Zero, which is the stage name for Toby Hawkins. Him and I do something together every month and have been for 3 years. And he writes, records, and releases a song in the space of a week.
God. Oh, wonderful!
Every month.
That sounds brilliant.
For 3 years, and it just forces him to be creative, and he has no trouble. He has got so good at writing natural, organic
Yeah,
pop songs. So check him out because I think his music's really, really good. I'm working on a new 3dB's Down album. Steve Hewitt, we've just finished his album. He's on Engineer Records, and he's someone that has no musical education whatsoever, but his songwriting is like the best I've ever heard.
Yeah.
He's
got a good voice as well.
Great voice, and his music is so real and honest. He's not afraid to be vulnerable in his music, which is just really, really exciting. Scott Mallard's good, also known as Sirens and Shelter. Who else? Jack Lewis, my brother-in-law, he's putting out some good stuff at the moment. He's in Australia studying music at the moment, and really honing his craft. So yeah, there are some guys to look out for.
So how can people contact you?
You can email me at admin@paulwestproduction.com. I've got a website that is live but is in the process of being finished, and that is paulwestproduction.com. Alternatively, you can check out Facebook, which needs updating, and that's Awesome Source Music, which is no longer the trading name.
Right.
I'm advertising me these days.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I learnt that one a long time ago.
Yeah, right. It's the best way to go.
Well, it is, because whatever you end up doing, you can take your name with you, can't you? But
Yeah.
you can't take a business name or band name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. Well, that was brilliant. I enjoyed that.
I did too.
Good.
Surprisingly naturally easy.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll hit the stop button.